I'll show it. Councillors, council officers, we might make a start to the council meeting. So, welcome to the ordinary council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, 4th September 2018. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Could you please stand for the opening prayer? We pray for guidance in Council's decision making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff here tonight for this ordinary council meeting. Some of you may have seen the notices in the foyer, but for those of you who didn't, I would like to make you aware of the following. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website. Whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and requests for leave of absence. Madam CEO, do we have any further or any additional apologies or leave of absence applications?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We do have a number of applications for leave of absence, which I'll just work my way through. We have Councillor Kim McAliney for a leave of absence between the 26th of August to the 3rd of September 2018 inclusive. Councillor Peter Maynard for the 7th of September to the 27th of September 2018 inclusive. Councillor Walter Villagonzalo for the 2nd of October to the 13th of October 2018 inclusive. Councillor Mia Shaw for 3rd of October to the 15th of October 2018 inclusive. Councillor Tony Hooper for the 30th of October to the 25th of November 2018 inclusive. Councillor Heather Marcus for the 12th of November to the 25th of November 2018 inclusive, and also finally Councillor Josh Gilligan for the 19th of November to the 24th of November 2018 inclusive. And there are no apologies for this evening, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Can I have a mover, please, councillors? Councillor McAliney, seconder. Councillor Hooper. Write that down. Discussion, councillors? No discussion. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 3 on the agenda, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest or conflicting personal interest in any item of the agenda tonight. Councillors, does anyone wish to declare any conflict? Councillor Ahn?
Mr Mayor, I have a conflict of interest for item 8.2 Mossville Reserve Redevelopment Contract Award, indirect contract impact on residential amenity.
Thank you, Councillor Ahn. We will ask you to leave the chamber when we get to that item. Thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. The motion is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, 7th August 2018 as prepared and circulated be confirmed. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor McAliney. Seconder, please. Councillor Hooper. Discussion, councillors. No discussion, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? You abstaining, Councillor Khan?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I wasn't there, so I just can't confirm the meetings.
Cool, thank you. Just checking. Against? The motion is carried. We'll note the reason why Councillor Khan abstained. Item 5, deputations and presentations, there are nil. Item 6, officers' reports. 6.1, petitions. Response 6.1.1, response to petition 17/06, request for car parking at Williams Landing Town Centre. The report commences on page 8 with a recommendation on page 9. There are no attachments. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor John Gibbons. And the seconder, Councillor Henry Barlow. Discussion, councillors? No discussion? Yes? Hands up. Councillor Arndt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking in favor of this motion. I had several discussions with my fellow councillors and council staffs about commuter parking at our train station, including Williams Landing. This discussion have occurred since late 2016, after I was elected. In August 2011, there was a ministerial call-in by the state government and a subsequent approval by them for higher use development in and around Williams Landing Town Centre. This makes the opportunity for council to purchase the land for a lower use, such as parking, rather than office or retail, a very expensive alternative, and also not the best use of the land. At the major activity center, close to a train station, we are connected by bus tracks and currently have 6 bus routes connecting surrounding suburbs. Council can adjust car parking requirement to proactively encourage alternative modes of travel and build up patronage on public transport, walking and cycling. And also, this is why the state government need to build a school in Williams Landing, so hundreds, if not thousands of families can take public transport or just walk to the school and train station, so instead of having to drive a car. I also note some of the other downsides of buying land for car park discussed on page 10 and 11 on the agenda papers. Nevertheless, I am glad to see part 4 of the recommendation commit council to continue strongly advocate to the state government to resolve these issues, as I feel reassured that council will continue to do so until real solutions are delivered to our community. I am also pleased that council will consider an update to the wider issue of commuter car parking in the next few months through a public council meeting. We also need to recognize the state government's role in improving access to public transport. I have committed to let the community know when there is a public report and recommendations released. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Arndt. Councillor, any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank staff for a frank assessment of the issues that need to be considered in relation to on-street parking supply and other options in and around the Williams Landing Town Centre. These are not simple matters, and clearly there is an understandable level of angst in the community. I understand the frustration experienced by commuters who rely on train stations to get to work and often find it impossible to park their cars at train stations in Wyndham. While commuter parking was not the only issue raised in this petition, I note the recommendation commits council to continuing to advocate to the state government on solutions on commuter parking. The scale of the commuter parking problem is also experienced at other stations such as Tarneet. I've said before that a modern public transport system is a critical need for a more livable Melbourne, and it's timely to repeat this view at the moment. What I've also said in the past is that the underinvestment in public transport by successive state and federal governments is unacceptable and must be urgently reversed. People talk to me every day about the impact an underplanned and underfunded public transport system is having on their families. It's good to see council continuing to work to use its strong voice and partnership with the community, and I look forward to receiving more reports from staff on commuter parking at train stations in the coming months, as mentioned in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor McAloney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the comments made by my Harrison Ward councillors and wish to thank the residents of Williams Landing regarding their petition. We had 194 signatures and a commitment to wanting to see Williams Landing as a desirable place to live and work. The residents' focus on our future is encouraging to see and aligns with our Wyndham 2040 vision of enhancing livability. It's unfortunate that as the Williams Landing town continues to grow, council's options for ensuring that adequate parking is provided occurs only through the use of a Wyndham planning scheme on a case-by-case basis. Council relies very much on each landowner providing sufficient parking for its operation. The one landowner, unfortunately, we can't require to put in parking is the state government. Whether it's for a school or a train station, we rely on state government to do the right thing. The parking provided at Williams Landing train station is typical of many stations around the municipality, the metropolitan area as well, and the car park has just under 650 car park spaces over 2 car parks, and parking is a premium each day. This is not enough for a growing suburb that also caters for Point Cook area. I'm pleased that Council will continue to explore and find solutions for this. Council's integrated transport strategy focuses on developing many transport options to allow our communities to travel short and long distances in a safe and effective way. Increased bicycle, walking and bus use is our aim. And I've seen a number of residents put forward some suggestions in regards to cycling. Council can do a lot with walking and cycling, but even then, major routes like the Federation Trail and Bay Trail require state government support. Increased and better coordinated bus transport must be also a high priority. Council needs to and confirms in this recommendation to continue its advocacy efforts with the state government to secure services and facilitate that our growing communities deserve. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McAloney. Councillor, any further discussion? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, when I was campaigning for my council election, I think the number of residents came up and they also said the similar things, which my fellow councillor echo. The Point Cook and Williams Landing is a big issue for the car parking. A lot of people's coming in morning and dropping. But I think we're moving forward and we have a car parking which is catered now 650 under the car parks. This car park space should be looked at, and council should spend some money, or state government, to further how it can be multi-story car parking is looking forward solution, because the land buying it and purchasing is cost money. But I think we've got to be innovative and wise now how we can actually utilize the resources we have. And definitely there's no doubt about it. There's people in the morning, they're actually very upset when they're dropping their loved ones and they can't get a car parking, and it's really impacting people's life when they're working and then trying to car park. So it's really, so I think there's a way forward. We can look into the new developments where we can have the multi-story car parking and possibly go a couple of levels, since this area is close to residential and also the town centre. So I think that can be explored. I'll be happy to support that. I think that's what the resident wants. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor, any further discussion? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this motion, but I will. I actually am supporting the recommendation tonight, but I thought it would be important to get on the record that I would never support ratepayers' money being used to actually fix a problem that is clearly within the realm of the actual state government. And there are issues not just at Williams Landing and not just at Tarneet. Go to Werribee, go to Hoppers Crossing. There are issues with car parking everywhere, and not just in Wyndham, but across the actual entire network. So it is a bigger problem, but it is certainly not the problem of ratepayers to fix this problem on behalf of the state government. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, any further discussion? No further discussion. I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6.2, strategic reports. There are nil. Excuse me. 6.3, policy and advocacy. There is nil. 6.4. 6.4.1, planning scheme amendment C133 for 780 Bulman Road, Mamburn. The report commences on page 13 with a recommendation on page 13. There are nil attachments. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Khan, seconder. Councillor Gonzalo. Discussion, councillors. No discussion? Yes? Vote? Okay, discussion. Councillor Gonzalo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note that Holcim have advised Council that it does not wish to pursue Amendment C133 for concrete batching plant at this address, and that it is therefore proper that Council abandon this amendment. This is a fairly straightforward matter dealing simply with the planning scheme amendment. However, I do want to make a few brief comments from the perspective of being Council's future-focused economy portfolio holder. Mr. Mayor, one of the significant strengths of our city that will underpin future jobs in the construction, waste, and related industries is that we have a good supply of industrial land able to be used for these purposes. It's what sets us apart from other more established areas of Melbourne, and it's an advantage we need to celebrate. Not all future jobs in Wyndham will be white-collar or value-added jobs, Mr. Mayor, and neither should they be. Historically, we've been home to lots of blue-collar jobs, and I support this continuing in the future because a healthy economy is also usually a diverse community, a diverse economy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villagonzalo. Councillors, any further discussion? No further discussion. I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Excuse me. Item 6.4.2, planning permit application WIP 9259/16.02, section 72 amendment, relocation of indoor sports facility at land known as 201 Sayers Road, Truganina. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Barlow. Seconder, please. Councillor Gibbons. Discussion, councillors. Councillor Barlow.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, obviously, if people have read through the reports and looked at the plans, this is a development of further development of an existing site to relocate for extra sporting facilities. And I must admit, it's great to see a school actually providing the facilities for their students, the extra ones. We hear all the time how important it is for our young people to play sport, to keep active, and to ensure that they do stay fit, because the habits that they pick up as children hopefully will be the habits that they will take into being an adult. Let me say that that's not an easy habit to continue, as we all know, because a lot of us probably do play sport when we're children, and then once you leave school, that's it. The simple idea of actually walking a kilometre or a kilometre and a half to the train station becomes abhorrent, in that you don't want to walk that far so that you can go to work, which we've heard a bit about that tonight. So I think it's a good plan, and I wish all the when it's finally built, all the children that's going to be playing with inside this facility all the best.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillors, any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor McAloney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note this is an amendment to the conditions of the original permit. The proposal is consistent with the aims and objectives of state and local planning policies. It's not going to increase any school population in the report. I felt the report was very detailed. No overshadowing. It fits with the overall purpose of the zone. The number of objections on this, on the night that we had a public forum, I thank the residents for coming and providing their objections. However, the privacy, the overshadowing, the noise, the car parking, was all addressed clearly in the report, and it's consistent with the sustainable land use principles outlined by the state and local planning authorities and policies. So I will be supporting this recommendation tonight.
Thank you, Councillor McAloney. Councillors, any further speakers for the motion? Seeing there's none against. No further speakers, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.4.3, planning permit application, WIP 10331/17. Development of the land with 16 units, associated car parking and landscaping, and 16 lot subdivision and common property in accordance with endorsed plans. At 200 Featherbrook Drive, Point Cook. Report commences on page 39 with a recommendation commencing on page 40. Attachments are printed in a separate document, page 3 to 21. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Khan. Seconder, please. Councillor Barlow. Discussion, councillors. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've gone through the entire report. I think the applicant has been very smart in trying to lodge an application against the VCAT due to the failure time frame of 60 days. And if we refuse this application today, they already got the date, which is set to hearing on 15th of October in VCAT as per the report. So I think they obviously will now appreciate that council's got a reasonable time frame. Wasn't that too late? And council is happy to issue the permit for the 16 unit, but the reason why I'm supporting this application, I've gone through now, it has gone through rigorous assessment, particularly regarding all the ticks any application needs against the criteria. So I would be very happy to see that, that a diversity in the development in the units happening. Now the 16 units is 8 units on the ground floor and 8 on the first floor, which is comprise 2 bedrooms. So kind of I think since we're moving forward and housing is important, affordable housing is important, I think this application does address that the need of affordable housing, also meets the criteria of planning policy framework, which is clause number 11 to all the way to the clause number 16.1, which is housing affordability. So I will be happy to support that, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good application, good assessment by council. So I would like to recommend that, the fellow council should look into it. It's a great way of approving the application.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, are there any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor McAloney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to note the application was exempt from being publicly advertised, and this council, as a courtesy to the residents, actually sent out a notice explaining what was happening, and it gave people the opportunity to come to a public forum and discuss their objections. I also note the housing and neighbourhood character strategy encourages diversity of housing, and Mr. Mayor, there is evidence of similar developments in this area. So that's part of the reason why I decided to support this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McAloney. Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While it is disappointing that the applicant decided to bypass council and go directly to VCAT, I am pleased to see the very detailed conditions included in the report tonight, which we will advocate at a future VCAT hearing in October. These conditions have arisen from detailed work and internal referrals to our waste management, transport planning, strategic planning, traffic, landscaping, engineering, environmental health and building departments. They've also arisen from referrals to a number of external authorities, including City West Water, Melbourne Water and Downer. I note from the report that the proposal is designed as a medium density site on the approved Saratoga development plan. I also note that this is located opposite the planned Point Cook Southwest Community Local Town Centre, educational facilities and other planned facilities, and its design would therefore respond to the surrounding context of the neighbourhood character of that precinct. I also note that the proposal involves providing more diverse housing stock, which my fellow councillors have touched on tonight, which is needed by changing family and other housing needs in Wyndham and in Point Cook specifically. On this basis, I will support the recommendation, which will see council advocate for a strong position regarding the application specifically at VCAT. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, any further discussion? Be no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.4.4, planning permit application WIP 1034.
Just letting you know.
Pardon?
It's okay.
Sorry?
Okay.
Thank you. WIP 10343/17, buildings and works associated with the construction of 3 dwellings at land known as 23 Landing Place, Point Cook, The report commences on page 72 with a recommendation commencing on page 73. Attachments, page 94 to 101. Councillors, can I have a mover, please?
I'd like to put an alternate motion.
Councillor McElhaney, you have an alternate? Can
Yes.
you read?
That council resolve to issue a notice of refusal to grant planning permit WYP 10343/17 be issued for buildings and works associated with the construction of 3 dwellings at 23 Landing Place, Point Cook, for the following reasons. 1, the proposed development is not in keeping with the existing neighbourhood character and does not accord with clause 15.01-2S and clause 2107-3. That the proposed development does not accord with clause 55.03-7 safety objective standard B12 in that it fails to ensure the layout of the development provides for the safety of residents. That 3, that the proposed development does not accord with clause 55.03-9 access objectives standard B14 with regard to the requirement that the development must provide for access for service, emergency and delivery vehicles, and 4, that the proposed development does not accord with clause 55.06-4 site services objectives standard B34 with regard to the requirement to provide site facilities including waste collection that are conveniently accessible. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McElhaney. Councillors, who have a...
Just a point of clarification, Mr Mayor. Is this a foreshadowed alternate motion?
No, this is an alternate to this motion.
Yes.
So the process is, it's been seconded. There will now be discussion. If it's passed, it's the motion. If it's not, we revert back to what is currently in front of us. So you've seconded, Councillor Hooper? Yes. Councillor McElhaney, please speak to your...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't support the provision of a permit for this application as I believe that is not in keeping with the neighbourhood character. And I also have...
Mr Mayor, point of order.
Councillor Khan, please quote your point of order.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. According to the clause number 2.1, statement that will or likely to mislead a deceptive person because it does record, it says it's been complied with the neighbourhood character, clause number 22.04-1 on page number 81 of 163. It does comply with the neighbourhood character. The statements council is making, it appears to be it doesn't comply with the neighbourhood character.
I get to tell him what to do at the moment. So thank you, Councillor Khan. It may well do what you say, but Councillor McElhaney is actually moving an alternate, and she's quite entitled to do so, and you'll have your opportunity to speak against it and vote accordingly. Councillor McElhaney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
You're most welcome, Councillor McElhaney.
As I said, I believe that is not in keeping with the neighbourhood character. I believe this. And I also have concerns about the overall layout of the site. This area is made up of predominantly 1 dwelling per lot residential properties, and I believe this proposal would detract from the character already established in this neighbourhood. While it may not seem like a big deal to increase the density of site here and there, I'm sure it's something that is important to the people who live in this area and want to protect the aesthetics of their street. I also have concerns about the layout of the site, this particular site, which is evidenced by the use of private rubbish collection service due to access issues and overall traffic movements to and from the site. As the responsible planning authority, I believe that we should be aiming for the best possible outcomes for the community and not allowing for compromises, which is why I believe this application should be refused. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
You're most welcome, Councillor McElhaney. Now, councillors, speakers against the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think it's been done a great job by our council officers, and I'm sure that if anybody reads the report on page number 81, it did meet the planning policy framework, which is unfortunately it did meet the planning PPF requirement. It did clearly says that clause number 16.01-3 as affordable housing, affordable diversity, talks also about housing affordability. Also meets our local planning policy framework and MMS, the municipal strategy statement on page number 81, talks about neighbourhood character. So this application, once being processed, assessed by council officers against these standards, and it did say that, you know, it's comply with it. I would be supporting it and rather than refusing it, because we believe the concerns that people have about this application, it doesn't comply, and it's also have gone through the other standards, which is strict setback objectives. So it says all comply. So I think if you do refuse that application, they will go to VCAT, and that will entitle more likely to be the win. And I think that is where I would be supporting and backing of the council officers' work and not dragging council to the VCAT, because we don't like to see that we do not support housing diversity, we do not support affordability, we do not support integrated housing, and this meets all the ticks. So I would be happy to support that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, any further speakers for the motion? Councillor Hooper.
Mayor, look, I just wanted to point out, in regards to medium density housing, we've just passed a motion that supported 16 houses within the immediate area. So this council certainly does support medium density housing. When it comes to the actual design of the house, these houses going into the street, if you go down the street and have a look at the actual character of the houses down there, it would stand out like a sore thumb. It would be absolutely taking away from the character of that street. It would not fit within the existing infrastructure within that street. I completely support this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Now, any further speakers against the motion? Councillor Marcus.
Thank
Sorry,
you,
I saw
Mr
you
Mayor.
went before my-
No, I can't support this amended recommendation. I think the council officers have really worked hard. They've looked at every point to make sure that after we had that planning permit, that they covered absolutely every point that was available. What I do like about it, it's got 35% set aside for garden areas. Now, we talk about high-rise developments. We've just passed that one. This one, I think, will fit into the area quite well. And I'm very pleased to see we've got this open space. And as I just said before, most of the planning requirements comply. So I don't think our council officers have done this without great thought. The other thing that on page 83, dwelling 1 will be visible from the public realm and present as a detached double-storey dwelling. This presentation to the street is typical of the broader streetscape character. Dwellings 2 and 3 will be limited visibility. So as you come down the street, you won't probably see them. And the same thing has occurred in Watergum in Werribee from the streetscape and have a negligible impact on the character of the area. As dwelling 3 is a single story, it will be obscured from view from the street. When assessing the site, however, the dwelling has a clear identity and the entry point is clearly visible from the internal access way. So I just can't see how I could possibly vote against the recommendation put before me tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any further speakers for it? The alternate? Any further speakers against the alternate? Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I just feel it's important to draw a couple of things to the attention of councillors before we vote. First of all, a hastily drawn up alternate motion that received at 12:36 p.m. or approximately 12:36 p.m. today to vote at 7:33 tonight, I don't think is sufficient time. That's the first thing I will say. On the point that was made about medium density, which I find to be extraordinary, we just voted on average lot size of 88 metres squared to 110 metres squared. The mover and the seconder were very happy to vote for that, highlighting housing affordability, and I agree with them. So much so that 450 metres squared to 830 metres squared is the proposed lot sizes as provided by council officers tonight, very much larger blocks than what we've just voted on with a 16-lot development only 5 minutes ago. And I think it is important when all of us made a commitment in a very long, drawn-out development of the neighbourhood character strategy that we accepted that there would be greater housing density in a number of areas in our city. We should not give false hope to these residents. We should not spend thousands of dollars in opposing this planning permit to then go to VCAT and then in all likelihood have it overturned. We should not support the alternate motion. We should support the thoroughly drawn out over many weeks with planning staff in relation to this, which is clearly in line with the neighbourhood character strategy. It may not suit some, but unfortunately that is the way it is, and we must accept that developments such as this are necessary as part of the housing affordability debate that we are having in our city. We will have smaller backyards, we will have smaller lots. In this instance, given that we just voted for substantially smaller developments in the last motion, and this is a substantially larger lot size for 3 dwellings, on the premise of neighbourhood character, I would argue that that would be entirely contrary to voting in favour of this alternate motion. So for those 4 odd reasons, I think we should oppose the alternate motion and stick with the council recommendation in relation to the construction of 3 dwellings at 23 Landing Place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gillian. Councillors, any further speakers for the motion? Or alternate, I should say. Any further speakers against? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I too won't be supporting the motion, but I can understand where Councillor McElhaney is going. But if you look on page 96 of the report and you look up the driveway, there's a massive double-storey house, which have to be probably 3 times the size of my townhouse, that people can see as they drive past. And because of the shape of the land, you probably will only be able to see one townhouse because it'll be covered by the single-storey house on the right-hand side. So from a visual point of view, it won't be. Look, it's on a bend. There are traffication issues about coming in and out on a bend, but again, and I know it may not be common nowadays, but if you drive carefully and you have a good look, you should be able to come in. The road is not a thoroughfare. It's a semicircular road that really the only people going up that road should be the people who live there or visitors. So it's not a through road where you can have 800, 1,000 or 2,000 vehicle movements a day. So it comes down to safety. The other thing is, it's quite right to say that we just approved 16 townhouses in Featherbrook. Several weeks ago, we approved 16 townhouses in Tarney. And it is going to be common practice that we provide medium density development on housing blocks, one, to keep the costs down, but secondly, because people want to live near services. And if you keep building houses on 500 or 600 square metre blocks, you're going to find yourself like what some people are at the moment, building very, very close to Boundary Road in the north, which is a number of kilometres away from any services or facilities, and it'll be like that for probably a long time before it occurs. So I'm a bit of a stickler. It meets the res code. It meets the Victorian planning provisions. Is it ideal? No, it's not, but it follows the rules. And if it follows the rules, I would have to say that I support the granting of the permit.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillors, are there any further speakers against? Good. I then put it to the vote. No. Oh, hang on. Hang on. Yeah. No. Don't get excited. I remember as soon as I said it. Councillor McElhaney, you have a right of reply.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. Look, I do not take these issues lightly. I do believe there are traffication issues. We are, all of us, have our own opinion, and I respect every person's opinion around the table. I'd just like to put it on the record why it was late, or not late. It came in, I actually took my leave of absence and I cut it short to be at this meeting to make decisions tonight. I was taking another week off and I came back as of 12 o'clock last night. So at late or early hours of this morning, a notice of motion went in, and as soon as I had it prepared, it was out at 12 o'clock today. So you got it as soon as I could. I'd also, in regards to Councillor Marcus's issues with water gum, I recall that very clearly, that decision, and I know that decision of what we made together on that. So I won't say any more in regards to that. But I will take whatever's said tonight and the views. We'll see what happens. So I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor McElhaney. Councillors, now that I've got it correctly, all those in favour of the alternate, please raise your hand. There are 3. Those against, the motion is defeated, or the alternate is defeated. We will now go to the original recommendation. I won't read out all the business again. Suffice to say, can I have a mover for the motion, please, or the recommendation? Councillor Khan, a seconder. Councillor John Gibbons. Discussion, councillors? No discussion? Good. Put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6.5, other reports. 6.5.1, Wyndham Significant Tree Register. Excuse me. The report commences on page 102 with a recommendation on page 103. Attachments are printed in a separate document, pages 22 to 27. 22 to 77. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Marcus. Seconder, please. Councillor Hooper. Discussion, councillors. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the holder of the Environment and Sustainability portfolio, I would like to express some thoughts about the Council's model for a significant tree register which is focused on tree protection via controls with the Wyndham Planning Scheme. I am deeply concerned that such a model does not reflect the aspirations of the generations of community voices which date back to the early 1960s, early 1970s, about recognising the value of the diversity and the wealth of botanical material, either growing naturally or planted in our city since its foundation. We did work with some of our local specialists and had many meetings. This did not work as well as it should have, and a couple of these wonderful people have walked away because they were concerned about how a significant tree register should be. A former council officer advised, with the expert calibre of our local experts and collective knowledge, there was no reason why the Wyndham City could not have the best, most botanically accurate, detailed and solid local tree register in this state of Victoria. In my opinion, I am concerned the model of a significant tree register before us will not capture the fullness of what the original community members contributed early in the developmental stages and visualised and for what they worked so hard for. I would like to point out that there seems to be a confusion of what a heritage tree is against a significant tree. And these two concepts are not the same thing. They are certainly not defined by or limited to the so-called criteria which the current model assesses trees by. This policy seems to be more focused on the protection of trees rather than the trees of significance and the planning scheme. I would rather see a different approach, as I have outlined earlier in my discussion. Sadly, over the last 10 years, many local individuals and groups have become frustrated and disillusioned by the proposed approach, to the point that they do not want to contribute any more of their time and expertise. And I worked so hard to keep them all together on this committee to make sure we got what we wanted. I would like to point out that I did have a meeting with council officers regarding the trees of the Von Mueller trees in Chirnside Park and the Governor's Gum. I am told it is, and it is in this report, I am told, and it is in this report, that they are protected by a heritage overlay, yet only this year one of these trees was going to be lost to us forever if it had not been for the due diligence of our director, Mr. Stephen Thorpe. And Stephen, thank you for bringing me in, and we saved that tree through the local people. This tree will be a wonderful tree. It will come back to a good health, as providing we give it love and attention. I will, as I said before, and I have moved, I will vote for this policy, but I will continue to work with the residents and apply the pressure to get a better understanding of our significant trees and heritage trees listed. I would expect that the review as per item, and will appreciate, item 4 it is, and will appreciate the concerns, and that we will call in a historian to check out the history, which there were so many mistakes in that we cannot let this go past. We have more trees on private land, and at this stage, and by the time this policy gets through the planning schemes, many more of these wonderful trees will be lost. So I will not be sitting back. I will be pushing as hard as I can to make sure that we get into the private realm to make sure we save these trees. There's trees out there that the councillors, officers and the councillors, we do not know that they're there. So this is why we have to work to make sure that none of these trees are lost. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Marcus. Excuse me. Any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Hooper. Sorry, Councillor Shaw. Sorry, please.
Picture at the post. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know you're making a difference as a councillor when you oversee something that is long overdue and very important to your community. Tonight is one of those occasions, and if successful, I think this decision will leave a valued legacy to our community for generations to come. Mr. Mayor, I am pleased that tonight we have a good starting point and a register that arborists and historians have pored over. We have also accepted that there will be a future round of nominations of trees on this register, and I hope many other nomination rounds to follow in the future. As Council's Heritage Portfolio Holder, I want to acknowledge the advocacy and involvement of many dedicated individuals and groups that have advocated for such a register and the inclusion of particular trees, as shown in the report. One thing you'll quickly learn, though, as a decision maker, is that no single list is perfect. And so there is likely to be some debate about the merits or otherwise of including or excluding some trees, but I look forward to peer review and further nominations. But with tonight's report and recommendation, we have the flexibility to consider other nominations in the future and to subject the proposed list of trees to further scrutiny. On this basis, I am very pleased to support this important recommendation to establish Wyndham's first ever significant tree register. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor
everyone
Hooper.
involved.
Councillor, any further speakers for the motion? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. By supporting the recommendation tonight, councillors will support the view that many trees within Wyndham contain significant scientific, social, historic and amenity attributes, and I am supporting this recommendation. We will also be supporting a framework where significant trees within the municipality can be identified, assessed and afforded appropriate protection. This register is intended to be a continually evolving entity. The register will be updated to include additional significant tree features and to remove those that no longer exist within the landscape. Both a suitably qualified arborist and qualified historian assessed the shortlisted significant tree nominations. The assessments were carried out between August and September last year, with historical assessments taking place between February and April 2018. Additional tree features were identified during the consultation stages that may be eligible for inclusion in future revisions of the register. I am glad to see the recommendation tonight specifically allows for another round of nomination of trees within the public realm to be carried out by no later than 2020. I note discussion in the report about the Governor's gum on Princess Highway and the Von Mueller trees in Chirnside Park and the fact that they are currently protected by existing planning controls. I am pleased that given the significance of these trees, staff will ensure they're included in the second round of nominations for inclusion in the register. Additional mechanisms to afford protection over many of these trees include boulevard and avenue plans, investigating a blanket control over publicly managed trees with a trunk diameter greater than 35 centimetres at 1.4 metres above grade, or as I said before, their inclusion in a subsequent nomination round of trees for the significant tree register. However, I am disappointed that the Calder memorial trees have not been included in this round. I have been advised by council officers that there seems to be some dispute on their significance, but I am supporting this recommendation tonight because we need to start somewhere. I would like to see them included under the protection of a trunk with a diameter greater than 35 centimetres at 1.4 metre above grade. Finally, I'm also glad to see that Part 4 of the recommendation commits Council to conduct a peer review of the tree register to validate and verify historical data in preparation for the planning panel process. Thank you to Council officers and other people in our community who participated in this process. This is a positive step forward in protecting our local amenity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Councillors, when you vote, can you please raise your hands clearly so I can see them? Thank you. 6.5.2, Library Service Annual Report, July 2017 to June 2018. Report commences page 110. Recommendation is on page 110. No attachments. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Khan, seconder, Councillor Villa-Gonzalo. Discussion, councillors? No discussion. Sorry, Councillor Villa-Gonzalo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note from the report that despite works at the Point Cook Community Learning Centre and the related fall in library services across all library outlets over the last year, nearly 1 million visits were made by residents in a Wyndham Library branch. While people might think the only reason people visit our libraries is to borrow books, the truth is far more exciting and a story worth telling. Not only do people borrow items, they also access the internet or attend a library program or event. I remember visiting the library at Pacific Werribee and found out that the jazz at the library was on that night, so I came back with my wife and attend the event. While I would like to see more local talent supported and showcased, I did enjoy listening to the Georgia Brooks Swintet and look forward to be at similar events in the future. Library visitors also use the space provided at each library branch to research, study, and socialize. And finally, they also participate in a variety of learning activities supported by highly skilled staff. This service we provide to the community is one of the first things people tell me they value highly about living in Wyndham and about council. And I have to acknowledge our fantastic staff because it is them who make this such a valued service. One statistic that surprised me in a good way is the fact that we have 80,192 library members, representing 33% of the Wyndham population. One area that did not surprise me was the high demand for early years literacy and lifelong learning programs.
1 minute, Councillor.
Our story time, rhyme time, and other successful ongoing sessions for young residents and their carers continued with etc., etc. So we celebrate an enormous range of achievements over the last year. We should also pause to reflect on the important community building role that council plays through our service delivery. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank all our library staff and management for their hard work and passion over the last year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villa-Gonzalo. Councillors, any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? I put it to the vote then. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.3, Assembly of Councillors. Report commences on page 122 with a recommendation on page 122. Attachments commence on page 123 to 126. The recommend. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Barlow. I was going to second her. Yes, Councillor Gibbons. Yes, it's all right. I'm back. It's good. All good. No, I was looking over there. Sorry, got something in my eye here. Discussion, councillors. No discussion. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Now, item 7, notices of motion 7.1. Notice of motion 580, Councillor Code of Conduct Amendment Candidature of Councillors at State and Federal Elections. The report commences on page 127. The motion page commences on page 128 with attachments, page 130 to 131. Councillor Shaw, would you like to take the notice of motion as read, or do you wish to read it out?
I'm happy to take the notice of motion as read, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I was going to give you that
night.
opportunity, otherwise we'd have to order coffee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Shaw, will you speak to your motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Oh, did I ask for a seconder?
Oh, no, you didn't actually.
I beg your pardon, I got excited. A seconder. Councillor McElhaney. All right. Now, Councillor Shaw, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this notice of motion seeks to further our best practice approach to governance in the lead up to the state and possibly federal elections, and to ensure that roles and responsibilities are managed in the event that a councillor chooses to nominate for a state or federal election. By requiring a councillor to provide adequate notification to council and to take a leave of absence during an election period assists in the management of potential conflicts of interest that may arise during this time. It is also important that the community is assured that no council resources are used, even inadvertently, in support of an election campaign, and that attendance at council events or functions is not used for political gain. The notice of motion put forward this evening reflects the advice provided by the Municipal Association of Victoria, and given that we have an MAV board member on this council, I believe it is extremely important that we take on board their recommendations. In closing, I believe that the proposed amendments to the Councillor Code of Conduct are in keeping with community expectations, and it is our role to ensure they are respected. I would also like to add that I've also had 2 residents separately contact me tonight congratulating me on this motion and seeking also actually supporting it. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Now, councillors, are there any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor? No, actually, it's me. Your hand went up first.
Okay.
And you did second it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'd firstly like to applaud Councillor Shaw's initiative on this notice of motion. This tightens up our code of conduct, and it clearly demonstrates to the public the expectation of councillors wanting to stand for state or federal elections. It's also about being transparent, accountable to our constituents, and it's just plain good governance. So I look forward to this notice of motion being passed tonight and being part of our code of conduct in the future. Thank you.
Councillor McElhaney. Councillors, any further discussion for it? Councillor Gilligan.
I just wanted to say that I support the motion. I'd love to know if they asked if you wanted to run as an independent candidate whilst they text you as well. I'm sure we all want to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's good. So no further discussion? I put it yes, Councillor Hooper.
Look, I absolutely love this coming from the MAV. When I first came onto council, I was rather sceptical of the function of the MAV. I'll be the first to admit that. But seeing policy like this and the guidance that they're giving to councillors, I actually see some merit to the organisation and how they can actually help facilitate transparency and greater open government. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. So moved. Councillors, any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Oh, against? I beg your pardon, Councillor Marcus.
Call for a division, Mr Mayor, please.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Is that entirely necessary?
It's the right of every councillor to call a division, Councillor Gilligan, and I've heard some silly ones called. Councillor John Gibbons, Councillor Josh Gilligan, Councillor Kim McElhaney, Councillor Walter Villa Gonzalo, Councillor Henry Barlow, Councillor Peter Maynard, Councillor Mia Shaw, Councillor Aaron Arndt, Councillor Tony Hooper, Councillor Intaj Khan. Against? Councillor Heather Marcus. We should have ordered coffee. Well, no popcorn, so there's no coffee. Item 8, Council Seal. Item 8.1, awarding of contract C1944/18, Council's Centres Open Space Maintenance. The report commences on page 132 with a recommendation on page 133. There are nil attachments. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Henry Barlow, and the seconder was Councillor Intaj Khan. Discussion, councillors? No discussion, yes?
It's self-explanatory, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, mate. You know, Survivor's on or something. I want to get home. Just kidding. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Any speakers against the motion? Any further speakers for it? All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried.
Councillor Marcus was sole survivor.
Yes, yes. I'll read that first and then I will ask Councillor. Item 8.2, awarding of contract C1980/18, Mossville Reserve redevelopment. Report commences page 138, recommendation on page 139 with no attachments, and Councillor Ryan, you have indicated a conflict. So if you'd like to exit stage left, I'd appreciate it.
Mr Mayor, I think I've got a conflict.
Stage left. Councillor Gibbons, you're declaring a conflict as well?
Better late than never.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gibbons, and don't forget to fill out the necessary paperwork.
It's true.
All good. Okay. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Barlow. Seconder, please. Councillor Tony Hooper. Discussion, councillors. Councillor Barlow.
Mr Mayor, the Mossville Reserve is the oldest reserve in Hoppers Crossing, the original home of the Hoppers Crossing Football Club before they got moved out many, many years ago to the Hogan's Road Oval. It was then taken over, and I was fortunate enough to be involved at that stage by it was called the Mossville Rangers Soccer Club, which then became the Hoppers Crossing Soccer Club. And then I say I was involved, I do remember going down there to actually watch Hoppers Crossing Soccer Club play soccer. When they moved out, the council, I was on council by then, and we were able to move rugby union into that facility, and they've been there ever since. Some of you may remember the old Atco huts that were there since the 60s. I'm sure Councillor Gibbons, who's had to leave the chamber, would remember. And the cricket club have been working for the last 40, probably close to 50 years out of these old huts. So it was with great pleasure that we decided to redevelop the Mossville Reserve site, and that we had the local member for Tarney, Telmo Langwilla, come out on behalf of the state government, bearing gifts of additional money to put towards this facility. You would all remember, of course, that the tennis courts moved from there, and we expanded the netball facilities there, which I think is great, because netball is the biggest participatory sport for women in our municipality. And it's shaping up, from the last time I had a look there, it's shaping up as a great development, and it's great to see that such an old facility that's been around for 50 odd years is actually being improved to the level that it is, and I look forward to seeing the final completion, not only of the buildings but also the work that's done on the grounds.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow, and certainly Mr Ian Drummond was in my ear a fair bit about it as well. That's for sure. Councillors, any speakers against the motion?
Well said.
Any further speakers for the motion? All those in favour of the motion then? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. I can't wait till it's open too, HB. What's that?
Might be open before you get there.
I've held it up.
I did.
Yes. Has the cult from Old Regret got out? There's movement at the station. Just joking. It's one of those nights. Okay. Item 8.3, Item 8.3, telecommunications strategic proposal. Telstra/MAV/WCC. Report commences page 144, recommendation page 145. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Barlow, seconder, please. Councillor Hooper. There, I can look that way and see you. Discussion, councillors. No discussion, I put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 8.4, update to instrument of delegation from council staff. Report commences page 149, recommendation commences on page 149 also. And the attachments printed in a separate document, page 78 to 112. Councillor, can I have a mover, please? Councillor John Gibbons. A seconder, please. Councillor Khan. Discussion, councillors? No discussion, I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 9, contract summary. There is nil. Item 10, questions with notice from the public gallery. Refer to Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I go and get my glasses? Excuse me.
Let Jenny your glasses. Won't be able to see it.
You didn't think you were going to be here that long, did you? Yeah.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. Apologies,
that's all good.
Councillors.
We wouldn't want you to misread anything.
No, we do have a couple of questions here tonight. So question 1 is from Arnav Sati. Arnav, are you here tonight? Yes. Hi. The question is, number and percentage of properties in Wyndham where property valuations mentioned on the rates notice has increased more than 35% between 2016 and 2018 rates notice, I think that's intended. What percentage and number of these properties are commercial and industrial in nature? And if I could ask our Chief Financial Officer, Binder, to respond.
Madam CEO, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Sati, for your question, which relates to property valuations conducted for the 2018 year. The valuations were conducted by Westlink as our independent valuers and have also been certified by the Victorian Valuer General. Based on the data provided to us, we estimate that around 48% of properties in Wyndham have increased in valuation greater than 35%. This equates to around 46,000 properties, of which around 1,100 fall into the commercial and industrial categories. Will I address the second? The second question that you had also relates to property valuations, and I've just outlined some properties have had valuation increases greater than 35% from the last valuation, which was conducted in 2016. I'm not aware of the specifics around the market trends that you mentioned in your question, and there may be different views on how markets are trending across different areas of Wyndham. But the appropriate data for us to use is that which has been provided by the independent valuer and certified by the Valuer General. And this is the data that is reflected on the rates notices. Residents can contact council if they have any questions regarding the valuations, and council officers and our valuers will engage with them and provide information. And those ratepayers who still have questions or may not agree with that valuation can follow the objection process and request that the valuations are reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to you again, Mr. Sati. We're more than happy to provide the response to both of those questions in writing to you as well for your future reference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No further questions?
We do have further questions, Mr Mayor. We have two more questions this evening from Mr Charlie Buttigieg, who is in the gallery. Good evening, Charlie. Two questions relating to the same matter. The first question relates to an issue that was brought to the Director and Departmental Officers' attention as to why they weren't brought to account for their lack of duty of care in the recent case of Mr M and Mrs J Buttigieg, 87 and 81 years of age, of Tarneet Road, who had their one access to the property cut off from 24-hour emergency services access over the weekend of the 25th to the 26th of August during unannounced concrete curb works across their property driveway. So before I read out the second question, Mr Mayor, I will ask Stephen Thorpe, our Director of City Operations, to provide a response to the first question.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Charlie, for bringing this matter to our attention. So obviously Council has been carrying out works in Tarneet Road, and part of those works has required replacing the driveway to 599 Tarneet Road. And in response to the concerns that you've raised, I've been advised that our normal procedures were followed in advising the residents, in this case your parents, about the works. So this included knocking on the door on the Friday ahead of the works occurring on the Saturday, and there was no answer, and a letter was left in the letterbox. And then we knocked on the door again on the Saturday morning before starting works, and then the work started because no one had answered, and we obviously thought no one was at home. So,
can we
Mr. Buttigieg, I'm happy to answer the question.
Answering the question. Charlie, can we let him answer the question?
Charlie,
Can we let him answer the question, please? Otherwise, I will ask you to leave. Please.
So again, through you, Mr Mayor. So, I mean, I can only provide you with the advice that I've received when I've inquired about the matter. But I suppose despite the issue of whether or not people were home or answered the door, whenever we do works in front of people's houses, occasionally we do prevent access in and out of the home. In those cases, we will always provide access if people request it. Certainly if there was an emergency, and I understand your concerns were that there may have been a need for emergency vehicles to attend. So it's common that our contractors who are doing the works will then remove any fencing or barricades and make vehicle access available, as they did in this case when you asked for access to the property, so they provided that for you. So thank you again for raising this issue with us.
no.
There's no reiteration. Thank you, Charlie. If you want to raise any questions, you can do so later. Otherwise, Charlie, can you please cease? Can we ask this gentleman to... Charlie, can you please leave? Or I'll have someone ask you to leave.
9:30, she left just after 11, okay? Nobody came, they were there all day. Now that is an outward lie. You've just added a secondary lie. I had to be there early Saturday morning. I was having breakfast.
So, Mr Mayor, the options available to you are to suspend the meeting and take a break.
Councillors, this meeting is suspended. The meeting is suspended. We'll leave the room and go in there until Mr Buttigieg leaves the chamber. And officers, the meeting is now resumed. Madam CEO, are there any further questions?
So, Mr Mayor, just for clarity, I think it's worth pointing out that council do have strict meeting procedure that actually govern the way meetings are conducted as per the Local Government Act and also as per council's meeting procedure local law. We do have requirements that we don't have intervention from the gallery, and I know to some residents that can seem frustrating at times, but it's important for the safety of all concerned and also the due running of a council meeting that there isn't undue interference occurring. So that's something that council often reflects on from time to time to ensure the appropriate measures are in place for the good governance of the city and moreover the overall safety of members of the gallery and other members of council. That's not to say that, you know, all intervening comments and matters are ill-intended of the council and therefore present a safety concern. However, we do have a safe procedure and a really clear code of conduct in relation to the running of effective council meetings, Mr Mayor. I think it's just important to point that out for all here in the gallery this evening.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Madam CEO, is there any further questions?
No, Mr Mayor, that's it for this evening.
Thank you. Thank God. It's the first time I've had to do that.
No, we have done it before.
No, I mean, when I've had. Councillors, item 11 on the agenda is Councillor Delegates' reports. The report commences on page 151, recommendation page 152, attachments 152 to 63. Thank you, Councillor Khan, for moving. Seconder, Councillor Ahn. Discussion, councillors? No discussion. Yes. Is that a discussion?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we have 3 new members joining our portfolio, which is Lisa Field, Salem Heather, and Heather, which is rejoined again. So we got new members, and we did meeting. Our meeting under the Urban Future portfolio will be next 20th of this September. Looking forward to work, and these members, those have nominated themselves and they're giving it time. I really do thank from the bottom of my heart. Now it's a hard work, take a time off and then participate in that, the meetings, the portfolio meetings. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, any further discussion on delegates' reports? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. We had our meeting on the 8th of August. It was a very good meeting. We have very passionate members that come to that meeting. They're well versed and they put a lot of time and effort into this city, as was the at the community awards the other night. One of our members, Mr. Bruce Boddington, was awarded the environmental award, which was really fabulous. This man does a lot of work in Point Cook and he is making inroads into cleaning up down there, so that's really wonderful. The issues that we discussed was the Green Living series, and it's going along really, really well. We've got many people working on that, and there will be many of those that you will be able to attend. We certainly discussed the tree register and the trees in general. The other one is the coastal management plan. Now, our member council officer, Sue Neal, is absolutely brilliant, and we've discussed the coastal management before. This will make a difference to this city. Sue is working very hard. It won't be a coastal management plan like you will see over in Rosebud, Portsea, because we've got a lot more natural assets here, but it will certainly make a big difference to the city of Wyndham. And of course, our waste strategy update. I've never seen anyone like Hayley that has worked so hard. She's out with the schools. She's had groups going down to the RDF showing the students how the RDF works, and it's absolutely, I love going down there. I'm down there a lot because the staff are working so hard making sure that everything is being done properly down there. And finally, the bin inspection program. This was a little bit disappointing. They are going out physically looking in the bins, not being photographed. And to date, we've done about 2,500, and sadly, people are still not recycling very well. So we have a lot of work to do in that area. But I'd just like to thank Peter McKinnon and all his staff for the work, and to our members of the portfolio for putting in the hard work, because I think the environment is one of the biggest issues that we have in the world today. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, any further discussion on the delegates' reports? Councillor Gilligan.
Just very briefly, I think I'm a big supporter of portfolio committees, and as part of that, we actually went out to the Wyndham Tech School for our portfolio committee meeting and got to do a tour of that site. For
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Community representatives got to get involved in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. And as part of that, we also continued the ongoing work of the development of our learning community strategy, which will be available for public consultation in the not too distant future. And that's really pushing the boundaries, in my view, as to how far we can reasonably go in local government to really push ourselves on education and community development. And finally, we have the Wyndham Learning Festival that's currently underway. So there is a number of councillors that came along to the launch in Point Cook, which was really good. And that's obviously on this week. So get involved, make sure we all sign up to an event. It's an investment that's important in our community. It's something that not only should we pride ourselves on, but we know for a fact that another country is actually looking at our model to replicate. There was someone from Dubai that was interested in our program. So it really does show that we are making inroads in trying to lead the way on education. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor W. I wasn't sure how many. Councillor Hooper, are you going to speak to your delegate's report?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep it short and sweet because that's what I like to do.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight in the arts culture space. There's a new member of the team, Nick Frawley, who is looking at our theatre program, our venues and how we use them and making sure that they're actually accessible to our local community. So I think we're going to see some really exciting developments over the next 12 months in that space where the broad Wyndham community will be able to enjoy a range of experiences from comedy, theatre, art house and mainstream, including I think there's discussion about some sort of Rocky Horror show of some sort.
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Hooper, and we will stop the time, but I think a number of weeks ago it celebrated its 43rd anniversary.
It certainly did, Mr. Mayor. So it's and it still speaks true to today. So there's many people that love that program. And also an exciting development, we've discussed a model for a local film festival for Wyndham, which the exciting report will come to us down the track.
So we look forward to it, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, any further discussion on reports? No further discussion. I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, the motion is carried. Item 12, urgent business, there is nil. Item 13, confidential business, there is nil. So the meeting is closed at 8:22 p.m. Thank you.